Hello and welcome back to the NAS Metal Production channel here at YouTube. Welcome to, of course, the part 3 of the top 25 albums of 1975. This, of course, I hope is the last part of this because I don't want to scratch it up the part to 4 parts. So, without further ado, let's just get right in to the list. So again, this is of course just the top 10 part of the video. So with that, let's get right in. So coming at number 10, definitely one of the album that definitely solidified their career as legends within classic rock. That's of course this band having a movie recently released this year based off of them, of course winning a couple awards at the Academy. That's of course is Queen, with of course Night at the Opera, of course the documentary or biography film, pretty much titled after the song Bohemian Rhapsody, which is off this album. However, this album isn't just Bohemian Rhapsody and the rest of it is filler, even though there is several other big hits on here. One being, of course, I'm in Love with My Car, and of course, You're My Best Friend. Of course, another popular track on here is Death on Two Legs, which I originally heard it when it was on the Live Killers album. And some of the other songs, of course, most of the big ones I've heard on the Best of album anyways. But there's also some other great tracks on this one. Of course, this is the really foray into even more experimental, even though they were kind of starting to really experiment with the Sheer Heart Attack album. This one, they just take it a lot more step further, especially when like combining songs that go into each other with Lazing on a Sunday Afternoon, which being coming off the heels of such a slow and heavy track that is, of course, is Death on Two Legs, and a personal favorite off this album, which we all know what the song is dedicated to. It's just a damn good, that's such an interesting song, and then just goes right into I'm in Love with My Car, which is a silly title, but definitely has a heavy feel to it in its own right, and it's just good. Of course, You're My Best Friend being also one of the other popular ones, definitely more acoustic based, everything upbeat, almost has the sort of that 50s, almost Elvis kind of feel to it. Good track, and of course, other good song being Sweet Lady, and even of course, the other sort of experiment or proggy song on this one being the Prophet's Song, and it's fucking great with, of course, that middle part with the sort of vocal delay and everything from Freddie Mercury, all good. But then, of course, get to the song Bohemian Rhapsody, which is the song that just put this album over with pretty much everyone at the time, and it's definitely a good track. As a kid, I've always liked the track and everything, and it still is pretty good to this day. So there, and of course, ending with God Save the Queen. So that, and number 10 is Night at the Opera, just a classic album from Queen. Alright, so coming in number 9 is of course is a debut album. Now, before I get to this album, I originally, when I did part 1, I had stated that while in order to be in my list, I have to at least own it. Well, this one, I kind of broke that, because I just have a fan-made bootleg of this album, because at some point, it's only a placeholder until I actually get an actual copy of this album. Though I own it in its international version, which is probably the first hint here, and the ticker, is the debut from, of course, Australian legends, AC/DC, titled High Voltage. Now, everyone probably remembers High Voltage as this, which, the reasons, again, the international version, before I start to really go and fumble and everything on some of the words, everyone recognizes the album as this. However, this is not the version that's on here. It's kind of the same situation they have with Triumph. Because Triumph had 2 albums released in Canada. One was self-titled and the one was Rock and Roll Machine. However, when they wanted to release the albums in here in the States, they decided to take both those 2 albums and combine them. But they stuck with the Rock and Roll Machine title. That's kind of the same thing what happened here. Here you got High Voltage, and then there was, of course, TNT, which released on the same year. However, when Atlantic they wanted to distribute their music, they pretty much decided to combine the 2 albums, because somehow they felt that this wasn't presentable, which is so weird, the way the 2 bands got treated. So, which again, they're on the same label anyways. It's one of the weird things about Atlantic. So, they decided to only take 2 songs off of this, but take the rest of TNT and release it in the States, but they went with the High Voltage title instead of just going by TNT. So, it was, in a way, a reverse thing here with AC/DC and Triumph. It's like Triumph got a basically title after their second album, while this one got titled after their first actual album. But, so with that, whenever recognizes as this, isn't really this. This was the real High Voltage that was released in 1975. Yes, it was. The date when you see on the CD releases will say 74, but it was recorded in November of 1974, but wasn't released until February of 1975. No one really got to hear this version until when it got chopped up, because again, Little Lover and She's Got Balls got put on this release. Whereas songs such as Baby Please Don't Go, which is a great cover, of course, they're not the first one to cover it. Of course, before them, Budgie, then after them, of course, being Ted Nugent, and then Aerosmith. So then their cover of Baby Please Don't Go, Soul Stripper, You Ain't Got a Hold on Me, and Show Business later got released as a part of that 74 Jailbreak EP. Whereas the other 2 songs there, Stick Around and Love Song, didn't get released until the Backtracks box set, which would be released, decades later. Several decades later, actually, and just crazy. So, to hear the whole album in its original track listing and everything is just so different. Of course, most of this album was recorded when their original singer, Dave Evans, was still in the band. Which you can hear the glam rock influence on this one, which is definitely why the sound is so different, because this isn't the more popular blue collar hard rock and roll that really came with the album that followed this one, and of course with Dirty Deeds Under Cheap and Let There Be Rock and Power Edge and those albums, and then of course the Brian Johnson era. This is not that kind of sound here. Again, it has more of a Slade or the Sweet kind of feel to it than just that kind of sound you would expect from AC/DC. And another thing, whenever one says that AC/DC have made the same album, they've never heard this original version. And of course, that Uncyclopedia, which did a whole joke page on AC/DC, pretty much went and joked about and said that they basically made High Voltage at the same time. They only based that off of this version and not this, because this is not the same type of AC/DC you would get. But again, songs such as Little Lover, Soul Stripper, You Ain't Got a Hold on Me, and Love Song are the most uncharacteristic sort of sounds you would expect. They all got a really almost just this really interesting feel to them. Almost just sounds weird. Like you can almost hear like it just has a real 70s feel. Almost it just definitely with songs such as Soul Stripper, but they all got a real almost more laid back feel. But again, let's actually focus on the song "Love Song." Now, when I did that, was it the Vinyl Tag 2019, when it came to the topic of, or the question of, the most uncharacteristic song from a popular band, or at least from a band that is, again, uncharacteristic, I had chosen Stormy Mayday off of Black Ice. However, I could have easily also chose Love Song, because this is such an interesting track, because this is a ballad. And at AC/DC are not really known for ballads. I know you're going to say, but right on. No, that's a straight up traditional blues track. Love Song is not a traditional blues song. You can tell that this was written when Dave Evans, however, had original title, which was titled Fell in Love, which, of course, with the recent interview from Dave Evans, it was originally titled Fell in Love when Bon Scott came in. And, of course, he changed up, Bon Scott had changed up a little bit of the lyrics for some of the songs, but Love Song got a whole new title. Instead of being titled Fell in Love, it just got Love Song. So, again, but when people also, when you think of Bon Scott, you always think of his sort of really high, almost very charismatic vocals. However, on Love Song, he's singing in a really almost softer register, which was so uncharacteristic from, unless you heard his stuff with Fraternity, which was his progressive rock band prior to joining AC/DC. So again, there's just some uncharacteristic things about this album from AC/DC, and of course, it definitely belongs there next, like Saxon's debut, or Judas Priest's Rock-a-Rolla, or an Accept's debut. This was a different album for AC/DC. So, and of course, it's a good album. Definitely stick around. And She's Got Balls, and along with their cover, Baby Please Don't Go, and Show Business really kind of give you a more insight into what you're going to get with AC/DC. But with songs such as Little Lover, Soul Stripper, You Ain't Got a Hold on Me, and Love Song are very different in a way, and are not the sort of same what you would get with like Let That Be Rock, or Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, or Back in Black, or those kind of albums. So, there. High Voltage, the original Australian version at number 9. Alright, so, coming in at number 8 is the album that's playing in the background, and do I really need to say anything about this? This, of course, is Hair of the Dog from Nazareth. Before this, Nazareth was definitely, when they first started, their first sound was definitely heavy for its time. But their second album being a bit more softer, then they would do Razzmanazz, which would then put them back on being more of a hard rock sort of direction, and really kind of move them a little more forward to what would basically come to this. Even though this album has its experimental points, because Nazareth definitely had a way of changing up their style for each album. But there's this, it's like when it comes to that, then Rampant and Loud and Proud, those are all good albums in their own right. But Hair of the Dog is the album that really put the band even more over, because of when it comes to some of the biggest hits off of here, Hair of the Dog, it's like if you go on hear any classic rock station, you're going to hear Hair of the Dog, and you're definitely going to hear Love Hurts, even though Love Hurts wasn't their song. It's a cover. But Nazareth just somehow popularized the hell out of it, and everyone just recognized it more as a Nazareth track than really who had originally did it. Which I guess I'm going to have to definitely bring up the artist, because I think they're going to give out the credits. I don't want to be too long, but just to check on who did what. Huh. They're not even giving they're not even mentioning the fact that Love Hurts is even a cover. There's no written by who. Everything got written to Nazareth, but Nazareth didn't write Love Hurts. It wasn't their song, it was someone else's. as far as I remember. So, of course, if you got the European pressing of this, I think you would also get another cover song with this. I forgot who. I know it wasn't. Let me look this up. Alright, I don't want to make this too long, but this is gonna just... We're gonna see unless... Because I'm having internet difficulties. Anyways, you would have got... With the European, you would have got another cover song out. Here we go, here we go. We're gonna... Some big... And Hair of the Dog. Here we go. We're finally getting the hair. Here we go. We're gonna get to it. Guilty was originally would have been the song on the European version of the album. Since it was originally written by Randy Newman. However, as far as the song Love Hurts, which... Trying to find... Here we go. Originally, it's an Elderly Brothers track. So, there. I finally had to go on the Wikipedia to look that one up. But yeah. Again, cover song. Not theirs, but they popularized the hell out of it. But it isn't just... those two songs and the rest is filler. There's some other good songs on here. Miss Misery is a good song. Of course, Overkill had covered it as a bonus track with, of course, right now, still except singer Mark Tonillo doing guest vocals on that one for as one of the bonus tracks to White Devil Armory. There's other songs on here like Changing Times, Beggar's Day, Whiskey Drinking Woman, of course the last song, Please Don't Judas Me, which is a, oh boy, what an amazing track that is. It's a very, almost proggy track of it. Like again, you do get some, pretty much some experimental stuff on this sound, but for the most part, this is pretty much them being hard and heavy, with the exception of Love Hurts, but still, it's not a bad cover at all. But songs such as Hair of the Dog, Miss Misery, Changing Times, Beggar's Day, Whiskey Drinking Woman are just some hard and heavy tunes from Nazareth. So, there you go. Hair of the Dog at number 8. Get back to the list. Alright, let's keep moving this. Alright, so coming in at number 19, 7, is of course Ritchie Blackmore. After leaving Deep Purple, which of course Deep Purple released an album on the same year, being of course Come Taste the Band, which I had already previously had in the list. However, what made the top 10 for me was this album here, which when Ritchie Blackmore left after the Stormbringer album, his goal was to pretty much in a way, well, even though it just led to doing a cover of Black Sheep of the Family, which was a Quartermass song, pretty much teaming up with the guys from Elf, which included the late Ronnie James Dio. It just went from there, and what we ended up getting was the first thing after leaving Deep Purple. And Rainbow Rising is a freaking great debut album with classics such as Man on the Silver Mountain, which of course Dio would also still perform even after leaving Rainbow. Of course, other songs such as Self-Portrait, and of course their cover of Black Sheep of the Family, Snake Charmer. Temple of the King, of course, 16th Century Green Sleeves, and Still I'm Sad are all just good songs. There's really not a bad song on the sound for me, though, as one of the characteristics, I always kind of felt that the same thing I kind of feel with King Diamond and Merciful Fate. King Diamond just had a different sound than Merciful Fate, even though Fatal Portrait was the closest to at least the Merciful Fate sound. The same thing can be said for Ritchie Blackmore and Rainbow. Like, I swear, This album here is definitely sounds like it could have been the follow-up to Burn, or Stormbringer, or even, of course, Machine Head. It just sounded like it could have been the follow-up to that, but after this, everything just, I swear, it just had a more different feel than what you expect with Rainbow, especially with albums such as Rising and Long Live Rock and Roll, and, of course, Difficult to Cure and Straight Between the Eyes, and those albums, it just had a more different feel. So, with that, again, at number 7, it's a classic album from Rainbow, and definitely the beginning of a new chapter in Ritchie Blackmore, post Deep Purple. Of course, later on, like I stated, with Deep Purple, Deep Purple, that was their last album, Come Taste the Band, and then later on, in 1984, the two, Ritchie Blackmore would pretty much put an end to Rainbow to pretty much help to go back and pretty much be a part of the reuniting of the Mark II lineup of Deep Purple to release Perfect Strangers. So, there you that. Alright, number 6 is, man, this is, there is something great about this album, and when it comes to this band, some of it can be hit and miss for me and them, even though I grew up listening to this band as a kid, but this for their first album is just, this is still a freaking good record. And I finally figured out the reason why, of course, is the debut from the Tubes. I've never, every time I've listened to some of their albums, they were always a very experimental band. Because you can't really consider them much of a rock band, but at the same time, you can't consider them new wave or pop or whatever, because they always had a way of really not pigeonholing themselves into one thing. And with this one, it always mesmerized me how unique this album is for what it is, and I finally figured it out. This is a flat-out prog record. To me, everyone, like, whenever you look up this album on Wikipedia, one of the genres that it's pigeonholed in is punk. This, to me, is not a punk record. This, to me, sounds like a straight-up prog album. With the time changes and everything, from especially starting with the Up on the Deep to Halos, the Space Baby, and to then side 2 with Mondo Bondage and What Do You Do, What Do You Want From Life, and Boy Crazy, and some of these, it's like there's so many different time changes in these songs that it's ridiculous. It almost sounds like you're listening to a much different song within the time that it's in. And the guitar work, at times, of course, them being out of San Francisco reminds me a bit of the first Journey album. And, of course, the guitar playing at times is a little similar to Neil Schon in a way. Of course, again, also has a slight Santana feel because of it as well. And it's the way they just put everything into the sound just made me appreciate more when doing this list and put it on. It just made me realize it's a fucking prog record. It's a freaking prog record. It's nothing else to me. It's a fucking prog record. And that's something I normally don't really, when I think of Tubes, I don't, when I think of prog, I don't think of them, but this album is. But this is a freaking good album, and I just love this, and to me, this is still my favorite from the Tubes. Everything else after Young and Rich was a fine record, but I don't think it was nearly as good as this one, though I may have to revisit that one. But then they did, of course, the Tubes Next, which was one of the earliest Tubes album I ever heard as a kid, and that's a fine album in its own right, but again, a little interesting sound for that one. And of course, Remote Control might be my second favorite next to this one, but to me, the first Tubes album, of course, forgetting it, one of the most infamous songs on there, which is White Punks on Dope, which, of course, Motley Crue would later on cover. It's also another damn good track. There's not a song on here that I don't like. To me, this is the most perfect album that Tubes did from, like, start to finish. It's just perfect to me. Everything else after, it's fine. Then when you get in their MTV era days, which is okay. But I just love the sort of almost... I just love the feel of this album in general. So with that, I just have to... It had to belong in my top 10. It's a freaking great record to me. So with that, at number 6 was The Tube's self-titled debut. Alright, so finally we're getting into the top 5 part here. Coming in at number 5 is another damn good album and a classic artist I also grew up listening to. And this album, every time I put it on, it's just sweet to me. It's just a fucking great record. That, of course, is Robin Trower with For Earth Below. Man, it's like when it comes to straight up electric blues or hard blues rock or whatever, to me, and of course the ones that came after, was it that built themselves up as the new version, whatever, of Jimi Hendrix or whatever, even though Robin Trower was actually playing around that sort of same time that Jimi Hendrix was playing, though. Robin Trower, when leaving Procol Harum, he definitely adopted the wah pedal and everything. But this album, I would say, is even as good as the one that came before it, which of course being Bridges Size, and of course I also like Twice Removed from Yesterday as well. For me, the sound that there's not a bad song on here. Shame the Devil's a killer jam. Confession Midnight's also another killer jam. Alethea. Oh man. Gonna Be More Suspicious is also great. But then you also got the sort of blues songs like It's Only Money. And of course the title track. There's not a song on here that I don't like. Everything about this is, again, perfect to me. There's not a bad thing. I would say it's just as good as Bridges Size. There's not a weak song on here. And again, some of the finest playing from I would say as a pretty underappreciated artist within the mainstream, Robin Trower, because everyone, maybe over in Britain, he's more respected, but here, I don't think here in the U.S., I don't think he quite got as much the respect as most of artists and everything, and it's a damn good fine record. So there, at number 5 for Earth Below from Robin Trower. All right, number 4. I had to pick this one up for this list. I just couldn't leave it out. This is a great album. For a moment, of course, again, another artist I pretty much grew up listening to. That's, of course, is Fighting from Thin Lizzy. The second album for the new reevaluated lineup with, of course, with Scott Gorham and Brian Robertson on board. Of course, they first debuted on the album prior to this, which would be Nightlife, which is a little bit of a start into more of the stuff you would kind of get with albums such as Jailbreak and Bad Reputation and Johnny the Fox and those albums. But it really started with this one, because the two just let loose on most of these songs, especially the rockers such as Suicide, Finding My Way Back, King's Revenge, or King's Vengeance, actually, because of on the CD here, which is the 1996 CD remaster. They accidentally titled it as King's Revenge, even though it's supposed to be King's Vengeance. There, and Battle of a Hard Man. Just some great ripping guitar tracks from there. Just good guitar work. There's not a bad song on here, though. I actually really like also the laid backness, because to me, whenever I listened to this throughout the years, it was the first half that really grabbed me the most, with, of course, their cover of Rosalie, which, of course, being a Bob Seger song. They just injected a whole new life into the song. They just injected a whole lot of life into it and just made it more rock. And of course, For Those Who Love to Live, which though it has a very melodic song, but again, it's a great guitar work as well from Scott Gorham and Brian Robertson. Wild One is also pretty damn good. Find My Way Back, again, like I said, is a damn good fucking track. Though I always consider it the title track. But it's the second half that never quite got me as much. But until when obtaining the CD copy, I ended up even more appreciating the second half of it. Because again, King's Vengeance, which is a great sort of rock feel. It definitely kind of gives you the taste of what you would also get on Jailbreak and those albums. And then, of course, then get to Spirit Sips Away, which is one of the most really sort of almost mellow, even more mellow songs on the album. But it's got a great atmosphere to it that I just seem to love. And Silver Dollar has a real good bluesy feel to it. Just good. And Freedom Song, to me, kind of also gives you a little bit of idea what they're going to do with Boys Are Back in Town, but much more amped up. Because it just reminds me a little bit of that. And of course, ending with Battle of a Hard Man, which has always been one of my favorite songs off of this album. And as far as the second half, it was always the one that I liked the most. But obtaining it, I've appreciated just the overall album as a whole. So it's just a killer album from them. The true beginning of that classic dual guitar hard rock of Thin Lizzy. So there at number 4. Now, number 3 is another classic artist, an artist that I pretty much still to this day, it's growing up with this artist's music. It just brings back, I'm re-listening to this album. There's a reason why I put this at number 3 though, but it's still a damn good, impressing album. Of course, I talked about Lou Reed early within the first part 1. I have to, and of course, since the sound was released the same year, of course, taking those artists, Dick Wagner and Ian Hunter, or was it Steve Hunter, excuse me, is Alice Cooper with his comeback in a way, because he had split up the first version of the Alice Cooper band, basically, which of course lasted from Prettiest for You up to about Muscle Love. Comes back in 1975 with a whole new lineup. This time, like this was his solo career, basically. And man, what a way to kick off a whole new chapter, because getting those band members, and there's a reason why he wanted them. They were just so hot and everything on that Lou Reed live and Rock and Roll Animal. There's a reason they were just that great of a backing band, and he picked the right choice before, because he just made such an amazing record. Because Welcome to My Nightmare, I would say, is one of the, at least at this time, was some of the best things he had did since Killer, in my opinion. Because even though I love $1 Billion Babies, I also kind of like School's Out. I also do like Muscle Love, but Killer was just my favorite of his albums, and Welcome to My Nightmare, I would say, was the best thing since that album. But he had never, after this one, I don't think he had ever quite really gotten nearly as good as this. To me, this was like his last really good album, though I'm going to have a... I'm going to have my opinion and say that I would say Raise Your Fist and Nail was probably at least the closest thing as good to this album, in a way. But that's just my opinion. But there's not a bad song on here. The title track is good. Devil's Food. And then, of course, ending off with, of course, the late Vincent Price. Of course, building up to probably one of the earliest proto-metal songs within Alice Cooper, next to Halo of Flies. That being the Black Widow, which is a great jam of a song. It's so fucking great. Of course, other songs on here like Cold Ethel, Department of Youth. Then, of course, you get to song like Years Ago, Stephen and the Awakening, which is pretty much a whole trilogy. And, of course, Escape. There's not a bad song here. Of course, you got others pretty good songs on here, like Some Folks, Only Women Bleed. There's not a bad song on Welcome to My Nightmare. So, when re-listening to it, again, I just couldn't have this any below. At least I had to put it at number 3 because you never. Again, Go to Hell. Alice Cooper's Goes to Hell. It's a good album, but to me, it's not as good or brilliant as Welcome to My Nightmare. Like that, Welcome to My Nightmare was just all around perfect of a record. And after that, I think the album's just kind of lost a little bit of its charm a bit. They lost a little bit. Even though there's nothing wrong with a little bit of experimentation and stuff, I just don't think they ever nearly were as brilliant as this. Just nothing. And of course, when he did an actual follow-up to this album, which was Welcome to My Nightmare, it still wasn't nearly as good as this. Of course, I always say Paranormal was a much more of a better follow-up. Much better album than Welcome to My Nightmare, but this album is still one of my absolute favorites, and it's a great album all around. So, there at number 3. Alright, so coming in at number 2, you were wondering when I was going to actually get to the sound. Since I talked about the first album, time to get to the one that came out, which was a little bit more later within the year. And of course, is again the Australian Legends AC/DC with their follow-up album TNT. I already talked about the contributions that the High Voltage album had to the international version, this being here. But basically, this version was pretty much nothing more than TNT being repackaged. Just that Little Lover and She's Got Balls replaced Rocker, which would later appear on the international version of Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. But the song that didn't get released until the Volts album, which was which of course you can find as part of that Bonfire set, which I have, is their cover of Chuck Berry's School Days. Don't want to bring that artist up, but Chuck Berry though. Again, the only other cover that AC/DC as did in the studio, Baby Please Don't Go being the first, School Days being pretty much the last. Because after that, they never did another cover song, really. Unless you talk about bootlegs of them doing Johnny B. Good with Cheap Trick. Still, the whole, basically, this is pretty much just TNT repackaged. Because, again, the first half, it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll, which is slightly longer on the Australian version to then Rock and Roll Singer, The Jack, and Livewire. It's pretty much the same you're getting on side A here. But then when you get the side B, or side 2, starts off with TNT. Pretty natural. But when it breaks is when you get the Rocker, which on here, it only just got to Can I Sit Next to You Girl, and then, of course, then goes into Little Lover, or She's Got Balls and Little Lover, and then to High Voltage. But here, High Voltage comes next after Can I Sit Next to You Girl, and then, of course, their cover of School Days, ending the whole album. And this is, like I've said, High Voltage, the original Australian version, was pretty much nothing more than was a really different album. Just pretty different. This album just ended because I got it on my computer here. Let me put a little bit of this on. A little bit budgy. Anyways, so with that, this album really kind of just brought in, just really, it's like the album, the High Voltage had more of a glam rock feel to it, just an overall different feel. This is the beginning of the sort of blue collar hard rock and roll that you would get with, of course, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, Let There Be Rock, Highway to Hell, and those albums. Again, just many good songs on here. There's not a song here that I don't like. their cover School Days is pretty much just, though it's apparent of where they really got their influences from, but this is not a bad song on this. Everything's a winner in my book. So there, I really can't say anymore. It's a classic because the minute you hear High Voltage, you know what I'm talking about. The international version, at least. So there, and number 2 is, well, TNT from AC/DC. So with that, what's at number 1? There's only one album I only could pick as number 1, and that is Sabotage from Black Sabbath. I don't know how else I can try them because I've already got on for so long, and it's already probably going to be part 4 here of the video. So, and you probably would know that by now. But fuck. To me, it's like a Black Sabbath during the Ozzy era was definitely pretty unique for its time. Heavy and everything, but when it comes to certain albums, some of my absolute favorites being, of course, the debut, Master of Reality, and then this. To me, I would say this is probably the best since Master of Reality. Some will say maybe Volume 4. Volume 4 is a good album, but I'm a little bit in one of those that say Volume 4 has a little bit of its weak moments, even though it starts out great, but I'm not a big fan of the ballad changes. And so it kind of knocks that album a bit, because to me, as much as filler that there might be on Master of Reality, it at least doesn't overstay its welcome. In other words, you get the Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, which was a good album and everything, has its good moments and everything, but it's a bit of them kind of trying to do a more proggier side. But I don't think they quite perfected it as much, even though there's some good songs on that album. But the whole proggy stuff just got perfected on Sabotage. But they also went and combined it with the heaviness of, let's say, pretty much Master of Reality and Volume 4. They just perfected it. Hole in the Sky is just a killer opener. And of course, go into the sort of short instrumental being Don't Start Too Late. Though being served is nothing more than an intro to Symptom of the Universe. Just a riff-roaring song. Definitely, anyone that says that there wasn't metal in the 70s, the song's riff-oriented, and it's just as heavy and metallic for what it is. But when it comes to prog songs, Megalomania tops it. It's a 9-minute, pretty much almost 8 to 9 minute song, and always as a kid, it always mesmerized me. And it's also one of the most pissed off songs as well, in a way. Because when it just goes to that finally really heavy part of the track, you could just almost can tell that Ozzy is pissed during some of that song. He's not holding back at all. But it is a great song. And then, of course, Thrill of It All, the good sort of, again, typical sort of Sabbath bluesy track. Then you get the Superstar, or Superstar, whatever, and normally it might be filler, but for some reason it just has its own unique atmosphere to it. But it has also backed by a heavy riff that I think almost kind of gives almost a really long sort of future insight to what you would get with the Dio era of Sabbath. So it just has that feel to me. Am I going insane? Might be the most commercial sounding song on the album, but I think it's an overall better than most of the commercial sounding stuff. Like, was it Who Are You or something off of Sabbath Bloody Sabbath? And then it ends with The Writ. The Writ is just, again, but it's also, again, when I say that Megalomania is also one of the pissed off songs, this song, just within its lyrical content, is just pissed. Because of, it's very pretty much Ozzy getting a lot of things off his chest as far as the management and the way they're getting screwed, going to court or whatever over a lot of whatever that they were supposed to have been promised and everything. And you can just tell within the just Ozzy that he was definitely not happy. But man, did they... Of course, he slagged on this album. Of course, recently he has slagged on a bit of this album, saying that it was not what Black Sabbath was supposed to be about. But if you ask me, this was just almost as anything good since Master of Reality. It was just in its overall tone, just back to being heavy. And after that, with the two albums being Technical Ecstasy and Never See That, which are fine albums in their own right, but they definitely weren't, they kind of lost a little bit. It's like whatever they had, they put it all in this one album, and after that, they kind of just, went on, until Ozzy left, and they got replaced with Dio, and when they went back to finally releasing some more heavier albums, Heaven and Hell, Mob Rules, and then Born Again, and of course, the first one and only with Ian Gillan. So overall, this is a fantastic reference. Again, as a kid, this album just always mesmerized me, and it was always played the most. And for me, it's one of my number one favorite albums of Black Sabbath. So it had to take the number one spot, and so rightfully it does. So with that, this was my top 25. This was definitely the end of probably part 4 here. So until, hope you all enjoyed. If you heard most of these albums, definitely comment down below. So until then, this is Everything Factor. Say I'm out. I hope you all enjoyed. Take care, everyone.